Hi guys, my name is Justin, as Joyce said, and I started out in two fields that will be relevant to most of the guys in the room here. I first started out as a journalist, and then because of where I was based, I became a media owner, and I've so far run 3 media companies in Southern Africa. So I tend to look, when I hear about these new technologies and these new opportunities, I look at 2 things. Firstly, can it really grow audiences for me? Can it improve the impact that my content has with real people? And secondly, where's the money? How does this pay for itself? Because a lot of these great ideas are also very expensive ideas. So what I'm going to do very quickly is give you a run over of some of those ideas you heard that were happening internationally in markets that are far better resourced than our own, and show you how we've managed to build very similar things in Africa that not only pay for themselves, but are starting to generate significant new business for our media partners. And this is not cannibalizing existing advertising, but growing new revenue streams to take up when things like advertising potentially come under pressure. So what we're going to focus on is, how do we build things that give ordinary citizens news that they can use? Next slide, please. So very quickly, just some basic principles that some of you might have heard about, and that hopefully a lot of you already employ in your new strategies. The first thing that we do in all of the projects that we approach is that we design solutions around citizens that are focused on citizens, not on, and the reason that we do that is we go after mass markets. So we're not building things to satisfy our board or to satisfy 1 or 2 very loud, influential stakeholders in our businesses. We're trying to identify a mass market, and then we are building solutions, news tools, and news content that services citizens and is focused on citizens. And all of this is aimed not at just creating yet more noise or clutter in the marketplace, but at deepening engagement. So we try and do it in ways that we can manage the interaction that people have with that new content. Next slide, please. But it's not good enough just to focus our content and our projects and our new commercial ventures on people, because as you've heard previous speakers say, this is a nation of over 170 million people. And if you try and build one product that is generic, that focuses on all those people, you're never going to satisfy all of them. So within that market, we try and find out where the demand is. Where are people most hungry or hurting hardest? In other words, where are they most desperate for solutions? And then we try and build new solutions around those key areas. Because if you're providing someone with a solution, they're going to be prepared to pay for it. If you're simply providing them for entertainment, they'll be very interested in it, but they'll probably try and find a way of getting it for nothing. People are only prepared to part with very hard-earned money when you're giving them something that is going to impact on their real day-to-day lives. So we try and focus on challenges that real citizens are facing. And then we don't try and just give them one-dimensional solutions or information about that challenge. We try and create a news product or news content that helps them solve the challenge that they are facing. So in America, you'll hear a lot of talk around solutions journalism. It's telling people what's wrong or what's facing them and explaining the complex issue, but then it goes one step further and it gives them ideas on how other people have solved similar problems before. And then it points them at the tools and the resources and the organizations that could potentially help them solve their own problems as well. So what we try and do is we focus on lasting impact. What can we build that will outlast the newspaper, the print itself, or the 24-minute television program or radio show? That people will be able to reuse repeatedly. Next slide, please. And not just reuse, but that we can repurpose. So if we build something for a health project, can the investment in the infrastructure that we put in be reused in economic reporting, political reporting, or other content fields? I'm going to, sorry, just go back one slide. I'm going to very quickly just show you some regional examples, as well as then stuff that's been happening at our main laboratory, which is in Kenya at the moment. So this is an example from Ghana, where Ghana, as you know, have just discovered oil, and they're busy going through a bit of a honeymoon phase, saying that we've now got a lot of wealth. How is it going to impact on our people? Firstly, and then secondly, they've had gold resources and gold mining for a very long time, and they're saying, well, looking back now, how has that benefited our people? So in Ghana, the national law says that 3% of the revenue from any extractive industries need to be paid back to the community on whose land that resource was found. The reality, like in much of the rest of the continent, is that very little of that money has arrived at the communities. Communities don't know why. The local traditional authorities get blamed. They also don't know why. They point fingers at the mining companies and at government, both of whom say, look, we've paid across the money, we don't know where it's gone. So what we did here in a 3-day exercise with journalists and some technologists was track down the information from government, from stock exchanges, from mining company reports. We built a very simple website that allowed any village in Ghana to input its name, and then searching the spreadsheet document on the back, the website would tell that village how much money had been paid to the village, or was owed to the village, sorry. And then how much had actually been paid across to the government treasury. And then further down, where it says your royalties were used for, what government confirmed via its audits that it actually done with that money. And we found that mining companies were often actually overpaying to government officials. It was going into an expense account, there's no corruption involved. But the agency that had to then subvert that money or divert that money to capital ministries was not doing so. So as a result, no infrastructure was being built. Government immediately intervened, and they've now set in place a payment mechanism so the money starts arriving at communities. This whole project took 3 people, 2.5, almost 3 days to build, and it cost $250. It was run by a television station, and as a result, we're now repurposing it across the continent. So it created great impact. It personalized news in the way that a TV show could not. They did a documentary about this is the problem. Then they said, if you want to find out how your village is impacted, go to the website or send an SMS and get the information. So it made suddenly a very big story, very personal. And the moment you do that, suddenly people who were not even watching TV3 in Ghana were now tuning into the website just to see how their villages were impacted. Next slide, please. This is a similar example from Kenya, where the elections were held last year, and Nigeria's got elections approaching at the end of this year, or maybe very early next year. In Kenya, the electoral authorities released where you need to register to be a voter as a very thick hard copy document, a book literally that thick, or as a PDF that was 1 gigabyte in size, which people could download and try and read, which is a very large document. No one can do that on their private accounts. So what happened was, again, a 3-person team took this, turned it into a basic website and into an SMS service, and it told you, you just sent in who you were and where you were, and it would tell you where you had to register. With a simple solution. We did it in partnership with 3 newspapers, and they claim that they saw increased traffic on the election music pages. The electoral authorities in Kenya said that it led to a massive spike in the number of people registering for the elections. It's been so successful that it's been reused in Zimbabwe, and next month, for the elections in Malawi, are rolling this out as the formal government solution. So something that was created in a newsroom is suddenly being adopted by government and the UN and large agencies as the solution for helping people find information easily. Next slide, please. Now those are great examples, but they didn't really generate massive revenue for their media partners. They did generate lots of audience engagement. So this is another example, and unfortunately the slides cut off a bit at the top. But this is an example from Kenya about one that did both of the same kinds of approaches that the 2 previous examples did, but in addition to that, it created significant revenue for the media partner. This is a newspaper from Kenya called, just go back one again, Sunday, called The Star. And what they did, back again, Sunday, yeah, called The Star. And what they did was they discovered that health information was something that working class people in Nairobi had very difficult access to. Big problems, like for example, going to a doctor, going for an operation and discovering the person is a dentist instead of a doctor. Or going, in my case, I got sick, I went to a doctor to get treatment, and I then got even sicker. When I got back home, we then discovered by trying to get the files from the doctor that the person was actually a veterinarian. He wasn't even qualified to treat humans. So we built a very simple tool up in the corner here, which doesn't look pretty because it was built as an SMS tool. And it's simply a list of every registered doctor in Kenya, and then a list of all the doctors who have disciplinary cases against them. Sexual harassment, malpractice, whatever it happens to be. And just using those two lists, we built a tool that if you send in the doctor's name while you're sitting in a doctor's waiting room, it will then send you a reply and say, he is registered as a dentist, and he's got 4 cases of malpractice against him. It doesn't tell you anything else, you then make your decision. As a result, we did similar things around, is the medicine that I've been submitted, been prescribed by my doctor, covered by my insurance? Will my insurance pay for it? And then also, where do I find my nearest expert? Very, very simple tools. We've been running them as a test for 6 months, and the media company reports a tripling of the traffic to their website as a result. They're now scaling it dramatically. We're building them advice centers around malaria, around maternity, and various other special categories of health. So this is a business model that generates not just increased traffic to the website, it also generates premium SMS revenue. So every time someone sends an SMS querying the database, they share 50% of their profit, of the amount charged to the user, for themselves. It's not millions of dollars, but it's tens of thousands of dollars. Enough to employ full-time staff and to start scaling this across. They're now saying, well, if it works for health, what could we do with sport and with politics, where there's potentially bigger spikes as well? Next slide, please. Exactly the same principles, again in Kenya, around education. And this is a competing media company which saw what the Star was doing and said, how do we get into that act? And they said, well, after health, where do people spend lots of money and where are they most concerned? And they figured out choosing the right schools, getting into the right universities, making sure that my kid is doing as well as possible. Next slide, please. To build these things is difficult because we're traditionally hard copy organizations. A lot of the information and the knowledge locked up in our companies is in paper format. So how do we turn things like editorial archives and paper into digital inventory, into building blocks that we can build some of these tools with? Very easily, it turns out. So we have a large program that helps newsrooms digitize all of their paper. It helps them go into their computer archives of all of their past issues and organize it so it's what we call structured data. So suddenly, you can start making that available for your own teams to build stuff, or more importantly, because there's such a scarcity of information in Africa, the next time that someone wants to build a recipe app advising you on how to make the best stews in Lagos, they don't have to create that content. They can suddenly mine the women's pages or the lifestyle pages of your newspaper going back 10 years, use your content and then pay you a license for doing that. You don't have to have humans standing there chasing them and giving them invoices. It's like turning on a tap or a power cable. If they're using the power, there's a little dial that goes and shows how much information or how much data they're sucking out, and it generates an invoice. And in Kenya, where they're doing this extensively now, they're actually charging them in real time. You suck out this much information for this many users, you pay us using electronic or mobile money live. So there's very little admin involved. Again, why is this important? Often we publish and generate news for all of our media. The The moment we broadcast or print it, it's dead. It's a sunk cost. Doing this, what we're doing is we're giving it new life. So we're creating a long tail effect, where suddenly content is evergreen. Next one. Now once you've got those documents and you've turned them into digital, and people can suck out the narrative, so the recipes come out, you can break down those recipes even further into data. And what is data? Data are things that journalists and media have always worked with. The 5 W's and the H. What, where, how, why, and so forth. Each of those is a data point. So suddenly being able to extract that from stories and saying this guy who was mentioned in this court case is the same person who's now suddenly a candidate for an election. And getting your computer system to do that automatically means that you have intelligence that you can sell to third parties or you can use to beat your competitors. At the moment you have that information, but it's locked up in your archives, stealing money from you effectively. A lot of these solutions help free and liberate existing value in your content. And then finally, even in areas that we wouldn't think would be good business for media, here are 2 examples from South Africa. The top one is the cities in South Africa, like I think in Nigeria, have the ability to make their own laws. But no one, not even the federal or the central government, we have a unitary state, so it's not federal, not even the national government has a record of every single city's laws. So they don't know what Cape Town is legislating versus what Johannesburg is legislating. So we've got a group of volunteers who are pulling together all those laws digitally. And then the media is doing this. Why are they doing this? They're not doing it for their own goodwill. They're doing it because they've realized that realty, property development, is a massive business. But how do you know if you can build a 6-story hotel in a specific part of a specific city if you don't know what the bylaws are? So not even the government has digital versions of these. Certainly a media company is able to offer them and able to then let people compare property prices, property laws, and then available property for rental or sale in a city. So they're building very powerful e-commerce platforms based on information that previously was locked up in a newsroom. The one below is also again not pretty because it was built for SMS. Allows people to go into a pharmacy or a chemist and look at the drug that they've been given and immediately, just either by taking a photograph of the barcode or typing the name of the medicine in, get back advice saying this is the price that you should be paid, charged for it. Again, generating revenue. And on top of that, if the report starts showing a trend that some pharmacy group consistently charges 6 or 7 times what they should be, an alert goes to the newsroom to say, here's a story that you should be looking into. So it also starts generating content, which in turn generates more kind of content and a feedback loop. Next slide, please. A little later in the talk, we're going to have a section 4, questions and answers. Or is it now, Jerry? I'm not quite certain. Okay, after Declan. And what Declan's going to do, who's going to speak next, and you all know him very well, is I've now showed you what's happening outside of Nigeria. Declan's going to show you how you're going to be able to make a lot of this happen in your city and in your state as well in Nigeria. Thanks very much.